وجعلتم الذرية إليك والوسيلة إلى رضوانه فبعض أسكنته جنتك إلى أن أخرجته منها وبعض حملته في فلكك ونجيته ومن آمن معه من الهلكة برحمتك وبعض اتخذته لنفسك خليلا وسع لك لسان صدق في وقطعت دابر المتكبرين واتخذت وصول الظالمين. ونحن نقول الحمد لله رب العالمين. اللهم أنت كشاف الكرب والبلوى وإليك استعدي فعندك الأدواء وأنت رب الآخرة والدنيا فأغيث يا غياث المستغيثين
زيارة في إمام المهدي صاحب الزمان عليه السلام. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا حجة الله في أرضه، السلام عليك يا عين الله في خلقه، السلام عليك يا نور الله الذي يهتدي به المهتدون ويفرج به عن المؤمنين. السلام عليك أيها المهذب الخائف، السلام عليك أيها الولي الناس، السلام عليك يا سفينة النجاة، السلام عليك يا عين الحياة، السلام عليك صلى الله عليك وآل بيتك الطيبين الطاهرين. السلام عليك عجل الله لك ما وعدك من النصر وظهور الأمر. السلام عليك يا مولاي، أنا مولاك عارف بأولاك وأخراك، أتقرب إلى الله تعالى بك وبآل بيتك وانتظر ظهورك وظهور الحق على يديك. وأسأل الله أن يصلي على محمد وآل محمد، وأن يجعلني من المنتظرين لك والتابعين والناصرين لك على أعدائك والمستشهدين بين يديك في جملة أوليائك. يا مولاي يا صاحب الزمان، صلوات الله عليك وعلى آل بيتك. هذا يوم الجمعة، وهو يومك المتوقع فيه ظهورك والفرج فيه للمؤمنين على يديك وقتل الكافرين بسيفك. وأنا يا مولاي فيه زيفك وجارك، وأنت يا مولاي كريم من أولاد الكرام ومأمور بزيافة والإجارة. فاعذفني وأجرني، صلوات الله عليك وعلى آل بيتك الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي، يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. وصلى الله على محمد وآله وسلم. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، الله أكبر، الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله، أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين عليا حجة الله. حي على السلام. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. حي على خير الأعمال. حي على خير الأعمال. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وآله وسلم.
So it's important for us. In Mecca, there are no furu'uddin, there are no laws or legislation except for namaz. That's the only one. Prayer is the only legislation that is established in Mecca, in the Meccan period. And that too, it was only morning and evening prayer, 2 rak'ah each. It was a good deal. In Medina, that's when obligations like fasting became. Where the Quran says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykumus siyam kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. That, oh, you who believe, fasting has been prescribed on you as it has been prescribed on those who came before you. Those other faiths, the Christian and the Judaic faiths and other faiths of God who were prescribed fasting, God is now saying, now fasting is also prescribed on you the same way. But that came many years later. What was the first focus? The first focus was, first of all, La ilaha illallah. There is no God except God, the Almighty, the One, the Only. Absolute monotheism. Number one. Number two, compassion for others, solidarity for others, akhlaq, mannerism. We oftentimes put the cart before the horse. Someone comes to Islam, we're like, oh, first thing, namaz, this, that, all of that is important. But if you look at the life of Rasulullah, he was not saying, think about left foot first, right foot first, what should I do? How should I do wudu? How should I pray? Those are all important, very, very important. However, what's primary? If I do physical wudu, physical ablution, I wash my hands and my face, but my heart is not clean, my mind is not clean, my eyes, the metaphorical eyes, are not clean, have I truly understood what the Prophet came for? Have I truly understood what his mission was for? Have I truly understood what is going on? So the job of Rasulullah, Prophet Ibrahim or Abraham, Prophet Musa, Isa, Jesus, peace be upon him, all of them was the same, to invite people to use compassion and knowledge, to think, is what I'm doing right or wrong, to awaken their conscience, to allow them to understand the world in which they existed, the world in which they operated, to realize that maybe you need to reconsider things, maybe you need to think of things. What are some things that we may need to reconsider and keep in mind? Allow me to explain. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I've often been mentioning there's something that is a fancy word for a simple concept, something called a fallacy. A fallacy is something that you believe to be true, you think it's true, but it's not necessarily true at all. And a fallacy can be a formal fallacy or an informal fallacy. It can be a logical fallacy or an informal fallacy. And so why is this important? If you pay attention here, this will help you with your social media debates on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, because it will help you understand where someone is making a mistake in their argumentation and their refutation. This is taught in debate. These are things we've known for thousands of years, by the way. These types of fallacies we've known for hundreds, if not thousands of years. Today, we also know that there are psychological fallacies that we make in terms of thinking, and mistakes that we make in terms of the psychology and the neuroscience of what's happening. Allow me to explain a few of these. For example, I've given you some of the famous ones. In Latin, for example, there's something called an ad hominem attack. This is a fallacy. Ad hominem. Ad is Latin for to, hominem, person, to the person. Ad hominem attack means literally to the person. Meaning what? So I say, hey, do you think that we should reconsider how we should do our programming at the mosque? And so I'm asking a question about the programming at the mosque. And you say, what does this guy know about programming at the mosque? What's his credentials? This is called an ad hominem attack. And hold on a second. Just answer my question. Don't make a personal attack at me. You're diverting the attention away from the main issue. This is a very classical technique that's been used throughout times. And so this is one category. Another category that I've mentioned to you is slippery slope. Slippery slope is, you're saying, like somebody gives an example and says, maybe we can have a dialogue between scholars and try to understand what is the reality of the matter. You're questioning the whole system and everything's wrong. Baba, who said that? Where did you get to that conclusion? This is You have to study formal logic to understand these things, but it's not that difficult, but we are not taught this in school. For those who have studied computer science, I studied this in undergrad, you are taught formal logic, mathematical logic, to understand how to program. You need to know that because that's how the computer understands things. There's also something called philosophical logic. That is the logic that is taught in terms of Aristotelian logic and logic to understand things. So this is one example. Another example. I'm trying to give us tools to think more clearly. Because in our society, we perhaps are not taught how to think, and we don't know how to think. I'll give you another example. And this often helps many people. Have you ever heard your uncle, aunt saying, saying something to the effect that you tell them, hey, mom, dad, eat healthier. Work out a little bit, exercise a little bit, eat a little bit less sugar. It'll be good for you. And they say, well, your grandma, she ate sugar, and she didn't work out, and she did this, and she lived to 99. You hear it all the time. Yeah, what they're not telling you is that all of her friends died. The reality of the matter, this is called survivorship bias. Now, you don't know how to answer this, but the answer comes from mathematics and statistics. What happened? World War II, people came forward and said, look, the Royal Air Force, the British Air Force, they had planes, and these planes would come back, and these planes would go to the field and they'd come back. When they'd come back from the field, they had bullet holes on them in World War II. When they had bullet holes on them, the mathematicians and statisticians who, by the way, solved World War II, they said that we need to reinforce these. So the problem was we need to reinforce these planes, but we can only put reinforcing armor on those places that are most vulnerable. Otherwise, if you put it on the whole plane will not be able to take off, it won't be able to land, it's too heavy. But he says, hold on a second. They all said, they analyzed the planes that came back, and they all analyzed it, and they said, the bullet holes are on the wings. Therefore, we need to put additional armor on the wings of the planes. Now, one of the most difficult things for human beings to do is, when a group of their peers is saying something together, to speak out against them when you know that they're wrong. We often conform. This is called groupthink. We just listen to what they say. There was one statistician who stood up and said, with all due respect, you're all wrong. What do you mean we're wrong? He said, you said that these planes that came back from the field, we need to reinforce them. We need to reinforce them on the wings because that's where the bullet holes are, right? He said, yeah, that's what we're doing. Yeah, that's right. He said, you are not paying attention to something. So what are we not paying attention to? He said, you are only considering those planes that came back from the battlefield. You are not considering those planes that never came back. You have a biased sample. You need to go back to the field and study those planes that never came back. And when they went to the field and they analyzed those planes that never came back, they realized that he was exactly right. Because those planes did not get shot in the wings, they got shot in the cockpit, the most vulnerable place where the pilot was. And he said that is where you need to put the reinforcing metal and the reinforcing plates. This is called survivorship bias. When you and I say that our grandmother lived to 99 and she ate sugar and she did this and she did that, it's like us saying put the plate on the armors and the wings, put the armor on the wings, but we're not accounting for all those people that are in the qabristan. We're not accounting for all those people that are dead. We're not accounting for all of those people. So it's important to keep these things in mind. But unless you have this example and you studied survivorship bias, you won't know this. This is exactly what the prophets came to do. They came to help people understand what errors they were making in thinking, what errors in judgment they were making, what errors in understanding that they were making, to revive their hearts and open their hearts and help them understand where the world needs to go. This was the manhaj of the Prophet Muhammad, as well as Imam al-Sadiq, as well as all the representatives of God. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين فاطر السماوات والأرضين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم محمد مصطفى صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. وعلى علي أمير المؤمنين وعلى فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين وعلى حسن المجتبى والحسين شهيد بكربلاء وعلى علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والخلف الهادي المهدي هججك على عبادك وأمنائك في بلادك صلاة كثيرة دائمة. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. My respected elders, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman here in Florida, across the globe, wherever you're hearing my voice, Salamun alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I begin in the name of Allah, the most compassionate, the most merciful. You know what's beautiful in this line is many people who studied the Quran, many non-Muslims when they studied Islam and the Quran, such as Dr. Henry Stubb and many others, this line that I've said, that every chapter of the Quran begins with, except for one, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Many of those Orientalists or non-Muslims, when they wrote commentary on Islam, they used that line in the beginning because they said such a beautiful line. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. If we as human beings got back to that compassion, we would be able to change the paradigm of the world. So very succinctly in the second khutbah, I want to just address a couple of things. And I alluded to this last night, but I wanted to come again. And that is this. When we look at the era of the Prophet, he was focused on compassion primarily and also knowledge. The proof of compassion is people treated him in the worst way, and yet he responded with kindness and forgiveness and empathy. Do you and I have that same kindness and compassion and empathy? Number one. Number two, he also valued knowledge. How many traditions that we have that talk about this importance of knowledge, where the Prophet is telling us in different ways that talabul ilm faridatun ala kulli muslim wa muslima. That is, to obtain knowledge is an obligation on every male and female Muslim. For example, utlabul ilm min al-mahdi ila al-lahad, obtain knowledge from the cradle to the grave. Meaning, it's not bound by your age. At every era, in every time, we should be learning continuously and consistently. Similarly, when we go towards this, how many narrations have been told with respect to this? So knowledge was primary. A further proof of this is, whenever a prisoner of war would come, at the time it was pretty normal, in those wars that took place, in those battles that took place, in the early days, not the early days of Islam. Remember, the Meccan period, there's no wars, there's no battles. In the Madani period, after 13 years, the first ones ensue. And when that happens, eventually the Prophet, when a POW would come, as would come on both sides, he would say, you can go free by either becoming a Muslim, for example, or you can just teach 10 Muslims how to read and write, or some knowledge or some wisdom. Question, did that person know about Islam? Did that person who came as a POW, did they know about the Quran or jurisprudence in Islam? They weren't even a Muslim. But the Prophet understood the value of knowledge, the value of wisdom, the value of understanding. That's why it's so important for us to revive the compassion and the knowledge. Both elements. There was an era in time in the history of Islam where Islam was not only a beacon for compassion for the whole world, it was also the center of science and mathematics and technology that I've told you before. That the first book on algebra was written in Baghdad, Kitab al-Jabr wal-Muqabil by Muhammad al-Khawarizmi. That's where we get the X. That book, when it was first written by Muhammad al-Khawarizmi, he didn't have equations, they had paragraphs. And so when they wanted to translate that book from Arabic to Greek, they said, what's the word he's used for X? Where does X come from? He says, 2 times a shay equals 6. You know, today we do 2x equals 6, divide both sides by 2, x equals 3. But they didn't have those equations. They had paragraphs, but the same concept in paragraph form. And so they said from Arabic, they said, what's the Arabic word for X, or what they're using? Shay. Shay means thing. 2 times a thing equals 6. So when they translated shay to Greek, they said, we don't have shay in Greek, we use chi. They use the chi. You know, chi-squared statistics, they use the Greek letter chi. But then when the book went from Greek to Latin, they said, we don't have chi in Latin, what do we use? They used X. That came from the Muslim world, number one. Number two, algorithm. Google, Facebook, Amazon, you name it, they all run on what's called an algorithm. Our world doesn't function without algorithms today. If you're studying computer science, have studied it, you know what an algorithm is. It's a repeating process that is what computer scientists work on building every day. Well, the reality of the matter is algorithm is a direct Latinization of Khwarizmi. That's the root of it. So this heritage was there. But where did it go? Now, stay with me here. I'm trying to make you aware of these logical fallacies and these misunderstandings that our minds make. Why? Because we are on a vision and a trajectory here. And the vision is to build the next generation of Shia Muslims in America. And I cannot stop here, and as I've been guided correctly on by many of my respected elders and people who have seen community work for many years, you can't stop to answer every objection. Otherwise you get derailed and you can't focus on your vision. We're on a vision here. If there's something that you don't understand from me, please come to me. Please talk to me. You are very welcome to ask me. The whole concept is to be open-minded. So if I'm not open-minded, how will others be open-minded? If you have an objection, please come to me. I'm more than willing and happy to discuss with you. But don't start trying to interpret my words in your behalf. And I'll leave it there, because I don't have time to answer all of those things. The reality of the matter is people are going to talk. But remember the analogy I gave you. There's the man in the arena, as Roosevelt says. There's the person who's the gladiator on the court, and there's everyone else in the stands. When people are talking, they're not doing. What's very important for us to make sure is we have a guiding star in where we're going, and we need to work on that. So to that ends, I think it's very important for us to figure out how do we add value and how do we unite our adding value to society. In this community, there's many people who do many things for our broader community because we're part of this broader community, as we should. There's people who spend time in churches and help support them. There are people who help other denominations of Muslims. There's some big time people who give their time, money, energy, resources to help build the community. But I'm inviting you to realize that in the history of Islam, if you read the history, and not my words, the Muslim Mental Health Lab at Stanford University, which is a top 5, top 10 university in America, has set up a Muslim mental health laboratory to study the mental health of the Muslim community. As I've told you, it's been very difficult post 9/11. And what I want you to reflect on and to consider for a moment is, what is our contribution in these spaces to help the world at large? Do you know, in the history, the first mental health hospitals in the world that are documented were actually in the Muslim world? But we've gone away from that tradition. We've lost that tradition, or maybe we didn't even know about that tradition. That they used to have doctors, they used to have priests, they used to have people who, for example, even they had social workers. They even gave people stipends when they were left. They were very humane at that time. As I told you, if you read Madness and Civilization by Michel Foucault, he says 200 years ago in Europe, they used to parade the mentally ill like zoo animals. And people used to come on the weekends and pay coins, and they would look at them behind a glass. This is what happened. Alhamdulillah, we've come a long way. Why? Because this week, we had Mental Health Day, World Mental Health Day. And interestingly, last weekend, we also had a wellness workshop. And we were blown away by the level of participation by the community in this regard. And my hat's off to you for participating and understanding. I'm trying to share this why? Because many people in your friend circle, in your family circles, in your communities, you may call something, in your words, negativity. You may call it frustration. I'm giving one example. You may call it worry, frustration, nervousness. But do you know, medically behind the scenes, the word maybe, these are all symptoms perhaps of something called anxiety, as an example. And anxiety is something that's documented clinically. And there may be medication that's needed for it, and there may be therapies that are there. But you may be suffering because you didn't know that term. Or someone in your family may be suffering, or someone in your neighborhood may be suffering because they didn't know that terminology. So what I would invite, as there are other communities across America, I want this community to be a mantle that other communities can learn from, and they can replicate these things and not have to reinvent the wheel. And if there's other good things that we can learn from other communities, absolutely we should. So what are some of the things? I think the resident scholar in a community, and I say this with all humility, and I use the growth model approach, meaning I'm not there yet. But I think it's important for a resident scholar anywhere in any community to have a group of advisors. There should at least be a political advisor, an economic advisor, a technological advisor, an education advisor, and a health advisor. a sort of a cabinet, if you will, to talk to bounce ideas off of, to understand where the world is going at the local level. Where is the technology going? Where is, for example, the world going? Where is politics going? Where is economics going? Where's the finances going? So what would be something practically implemented? Remember, always, think globally, act locally. So it's high time that, for example, we have a clinic here, which some of our other Muslim friends and other Shia community have across America. For example, that does what? That does a medical clinic. I remember one of my dear friends was just visiting Dr. Nathani from Minnesota, and they have Al-Hadi clinic. I remember when I used to go to Minnesota quite frequently before the pandemic. It's a beautiful thing. It's a free of cost medical clinic that helps people who are Muslims, Christian, Jews, you name it, regardless of caste, color, and creed. And it was started by the Muslim community. And what's so beautiful about it is, now, not only do Muslim doctors participate, non-Muslim doctors journey and come to the center to help other people. Because they say, look, I'm retired now I want to help. I want to help other people. So when you start something good, when you start something beautiful, people follow. And they say, this is the right thing to do. Your nafs, your soul says this is the right thing to do. So we should have that, one example. Number two, when I was in Chicago, the Muslim community, hats off to them. They have the Khalil Center. The Khalil Center is from our brothers in the Sunni community, brethren in the Sunni community, and this is a Muslim mental health center that gives therapy and treatment to all people, all Muslims, without any questions, no cost. Why don't we support or benefit or replicate this? So locally, we would have a clinic that gives people treatment, medical treatment. If you have insurance, great. If you don't, with no questions asked, we help you. Mental health. There's a third dimension, financial health. Believe me, in America, financial literacy is not taught. So you may have grown up in an environment where you were told to cut costs, save, invest, things of this nature. But if you just watch some documentaries on Netflix, like the ones that I was seeing, many people in America are not taught this. So the Amazon bills rise up, and you're saying, hey, they should be responsible, and they should know how to run their money, or they'll spend on this and that. But hold on a second. Maybe nobody taught them this. So maybe we can help people in the 6 to 9 months if there's a recession coming or economics are going to get tough. You may be able to weather the storm, but there may be other people. Of course, all of this must be done within the legislation, within the limits of the law, and all of those things. I'm not saying to transgress that in any way. It should be followed. All protocols must be followed. But when it comes to the three main pillars of life, health, wealth, and happiness, you may have a tremendous amount to offer people in terms of your knowledge that you have gained. And when you are given something from Islam, you have a responsibility to share it. It's not always only money. It can be what the wisdom that you have. Remember, sustenance has all forms in Islam. So my question to you is, the last point that I'm saying, and I'm concluding here, be careful of your environment. And I'm using myself as an example, the final word. If you are constantly, have you ever heard of that saying, misery loves company? When someone's constantly saying negativity in your ear, you will start reflecting that. I was doing this, by the way. People were constantly saying, talk about this problem, this problem, this problem. There's a lot of problems. But I'm going to give you a challenge. For 1 week, from this Jummah to next Jummah, try to make it an effort. If anything negative comes up, you won't pay any attention to it. Get up, walk away. Just focus on the positive, because that negative has a huge impact on you, your family, and society. If you don't remember anything, remember the Harvard study I told you about. 3 degrees of separation. You can pass your emotions on to 3 people you've never met in your life. If you're happy, that happiness can pass on. If you're angry or negative, that can also pass on. So if someone says they're saying this and they're saying that, tune it out. It's just noise. Focus on doing something for this world and for humanity to make someone else's life better. Do work. That's what is most important. And we ask Allah that we have the ability to do that. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. Illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihat. Wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr.